On Monday, so right after the weekend, boom, you pop out a memo giving them exactly what they want. Now, by the way, I understand that. In politics, that happens all the time. An important special interest wants something. Sir, yes, sir. We're going to listen to them. Let me ask you something, General Garland. In the letter, which you told the House of Representatives was the basis for this abusive memo targeting parents, how many incidents are cited in that memo?
I have to look back through the memo. I can't count it.
You don't know. How many of them were violent?
Again, the general report.
How many of them were violent? Do you know?
I don't know.
You don't know. And there's a reason you don't know. Because you didn't care, and nobody in your office cared to find out. I did a quick count just sitting here. During this hearing, I counted 20 incidents cited. Of the 20, 15 on their face are nonviolent. They involve things like insults. They involve a Nazi salute. That's one of the examples. My God, a parent did a Nazi salute at a school board because he thought the policies were oppressive. General Garland is doing a Nazi salute at an elected official. Is that protected by the First Amendment?
Yes, it is.
Okay. 15 of the 20 on the face of it are not violent. They're not threats of violence. They're parents who are unhappy. Yet, miraculously, when you write a memo, the opening line of your memo, in recent months, there has been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence. You know what? You didn't look, and nobody on your staff looked. Did you even look up the 20 instances?
As I testified, the decision to send a memo is for an assessment.
Did you look up the 20 instances?
I did not read.
Did anyone on your staff look them up?
I don't know the answer, but it's not
But of course you don't. In general, there's a reason. Look, you started your career as a law clerk to Justice Brennan. You've had many law clerks during the year, during your time as a judge. I was a clerk to Chief Justice Rehnquist. I'll tell you what, if I drafted an opinion for the Chief Justice and walked in and it said, there's a disturbing pattern of violence, well, Ted, how do you know that? Well, I got an amicus brief here who claims it. You would fire a law clerk who did that. You're the Attorney General of the United States. This was not a tweet you sent. This is a memo to the Federal Bureau of Investigations saying, go investigate parents as domestic terrorists.
That is not what the memo says at all. It does not.
Is it what the letter says?
That is not what.
Is it what the letter says?
I don't care what the letter says.
You don't care. You said it was the basis of your memo. You testified under oath before the House of Representatives. The letter was the basis of your memo. Now you don't care about the letter?
The letter and public reports of violence and threats of violence. My memo says nothing about domestic terrorism, says nothing about parents committing any such things. My memo is an attempt to get an assessment of whether there is a problem out there that the federal government needs to resolve.
The letter on its face says the actions of the parents could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism.
And that is wrong.
And asks the president to use the Patriot Act in regards to domestic terrorism directed at parents. This was the basis of your memo.
My memo.
The Department of Justice, when you're directing the FBI to engage in law enforcement, you're not behaving as a political operative because a political ally of the president says, hey, go attack these parents because we don't like what they're saying. Department of Justice, you did no independent research on what was happening, did you?
The memo has nothing to do with partisan.
Did you do independent research?
The memo has.
Did you do independent research?
The memo has nothing to do with
you're not answering that
politics.
Question. You've testified you know nothing about the violent sexual assault that happened in Loudoun County, even though it's one of the bases in this letter.
I read about it since then.
Okay. You told the House last week you knew nothing about it.
Not know at the time, no.
Okay. This week, the court concluded that a 14-year-old girl was violently raped by a boy wearing a skirt in the girls' restroom. The school district covered it up, released the boy, sent him to another school where he violently raped another girl. The father, who Mr. Hawley just showed you, was the father of the first girl. He was understandably, do you understand why a parent would be upset when your daughter is raped at school, the school board covers it up, and then lies to you and claims there have been no assaults, we have no instances of assaults in our bathroom, and that was a flat-out lie, as the court concluded this week. Do you understand why the parent would be upset?
Absolutely, and any expressions of upset are completely protected by the First Amendment.
Except you just called him a domestic terrorist.
I never called him that. That's not correct.
This letter calls him a domestic terrorist. You based a direction to the FBI, an official direction from the Attorney General, on this letter, and I'll tell you what, the NSBA is so embarrassed of this letter, they've apologized for it and retracted it, but you don't apparently have the same willingness to apologize and retract what you did. Let me ask you something else. A big part of this letter is that they're upset about parents not wanting critical race theory taught. Your son-in-law makes a very substantial sum of money from a company involved in the teaching of critical race theory. Did you seek and receive a decision from an ethics advisor at the Department of Justice before you carried out an action that would have a predictable financial benefit to your son-in-law?
This memorandum is aimed at violence and threats of
I just
violence.
asked a question. Did you seek an
ethics
ethics
no predictable
Did you
effect
seek
on-
an ethics opinion?
It has no
Did you seek an ethics opinion? Judge, you know?
And I got to tell you, there is no state in the union with a bigger divide between their senator and the values of the state. That's right. Look, Raphael Warnock, you know, Herschel and I were sitting down at a barbecue restaurant a few weeks back having lunch. Actually, the depressing thing is I was having lunch. Herschel doesn't eat lunch, which is why he's a Hall of Famer. And I'm a lawyer. But we were talking over barbecue, and we observed a simple dynamic. Democrats win when they lie effectively. And Republicans win when we tell the truth effectively. Now, why is that? The reason is simple, because our values are the values of the people of Georgia and the values of this country. I want you to think of the ads Raphael Warnock is running. He's running ads all over Georgia saying, well, you know, I teamed up with Ted Cruz to pass legislation building a new freeway. And I'll tell you what, that is actually right. It was the Cruz-Warnock bill. I introduced it, I wrote it, he joined on board, and we passed it. But what's interesting is he didn't mention the stuff he's done. He didn't mention his record. He didn't mention that he voted to send stimulus checks to every single illegal alien in America. Raphael Warnock didn't mention that he voted to send stimulus checks to criminals in jail. Raphael Warnock didn't mention that he voted in favor of school shutdowns all across this country. He didn't mention that he voted in favor of COVID vaccine mandates and the government forcing you to take a vaccine against your will. Let me tell you, I forced a vote on the Senate floor that said that the FBI should not target parents, not target moms and dads as domestic terrorists for speaking up at school boards. Raphael Warnock voted no, and he said send the G-men after the moms and dads. I forced a vote on the Senate floor and said the D.C. public schools should not enforce a COVID vaccine mandate that would throw out of school 40% of the African American kids in the D.C. public schools. Raphael Warnock voted no to throw out of school 40% of the black kids in D.C. And look, this really underscores something. In a race like this, the Democrats, they don't talk about what Herschel believes. They don't talk about what he'll stand for. What they try to do is they try to smear his character. They try to go nasty. They try to go personal. They try to go vicious because they cannot defend their record. Let me tell you what's happened under Democrat school shutdowns. Our kids' reading scores have plummeted. Our kids' math scores have plummeted. And the racial gap, the gap between white kids and...
I was informed a few days ago that when I was going to seek unanimous consent, the senator from Connecticut was going to object. Now, the senator from Connecticut styles himself the leading advocate of gun control in the U.S. Senate. I was asked by reporters, why are the Democrats objecting to this? And I'll tell you what I told reporters. I have no idea. They haven't said. They haven't told me why they object to it. And so I was genuinely looking forward to seeing the senator from Connecticut's remarks. I was sitting here waiting to see, why do you oppose more police officers to keep our kids safe? Why do you oppose mental health counselors in schools? I've been in the Senate 10 years. The senator from Connecticut and I were elected at the same time. I've engaged in many debates on this floor, including with the senator from Connecticut. The fact that he chose not to say a word about why he objects is stunning. I find myself genuinely flabbergasted. I will say one of the reasons I think the senator from Connecticut feels content not only not to argue, but now to walk off the floor and not even listen to the debate he's ostensibly participating in. One of the reasons he feels free to do so is if you look up at the Senate gallery, I can count them, there are precisely 0 reporters in this gallery. Not a single one of the corporate media will report on this, and I think the senator from Connecticut feels absolutely certain. When he walks out, he will have reporters that will say, tell me how terrible Donald Trump is. And he'll lean in and say, oh, Donald Trump is really terrible. But not a one of the reporters will ask, hey, wait a second, why don't you want police officers keeping our kids safe? None of them will. The Democrats are protected by a dishonest army of propagandists in the corporate media. CNN will not have a panel sitting around discussing why is it that the Democrats simply do not care to defend their positions. Let me tell you, when there's a mass murdering and the Democrats stand up and give speeches and they point at Republicans and say, blood is on your hands, it's great political rhetoric. It's dishonest. But boy, it gins up their donors. It gets people to go and write checks to Democrats and fund their campaigns. What we just saw reveals that Democrats have one objective when a mass murder happens, and that is to take away the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. That is always, always, always their solution. Never mind that it doesn't work. Never mind that it doesn't stop violent crime. Never mind that if you look at the jurisdictions across the country with the strictest gun control laws, almost every single one of them consistently has among the highest crime rates and murder rates. Earlier this year, the senator from Connecticut authored his big gun control package, rammed it through this body. A package which will do nothing, 0, to stop mass murders. We will see another mass murder. I pray that we don't, but evil exists in the world, and if another lunatic attacks a school, and there's not a police officer at the front door to stop him, remember right now. Remember this moment when the Democrats said, no, we will not protect our kids. There are lots of arguments the senator from Connecticut could have made. He chose to make none of them. If he does not like how the money in this bill is specifically spent, I'm now going to propound a second unanimous consent bill. There are right now $135 billion in unspent COVID relief funds to schools. Under the rules the Democrats have put in place, those funds cannot be spent on school security. The second bill that I'm going to ask this body to pass is a bill that is very simple. It's one page. It says schools can spend some of that $135 billion on school security. They can decide what to spend it on. But if they decide they want to hire an additional police officer, they can spend the money on that. If they decide they want to enhance the physical security of their campus to make their students safer, they can spend it